Hello, my name is Anna Malzewski and I am the knitter and the author from the blog Knitting Up a Storm. I'm also the pattern designer behind KUAS Designs on Ravelry, and KUAS is short for Knitting Up a Storm. I don't think I've ever really mentioned that on my podcast or on my blog, but KUAS is an abbreviation from Knitting Up a Storm. So, I have so much to share with you guys. I've been on 2 separate trips recently, actually this month, and I've been knitting nonstop. And so I have finished several projects, and I also have several projects on my needles. And so this episode is going to be jam-packed with knitting. No fluff, all knitting, and it's Tuesday, October 10th, and I can't even believe that we're almost halfway through October. I mean, in two or so weeks, my boys are going to be 7 years old. I have twin boys, and they were born 6.5 weeks early. They were actually supposed to be my birthday present, but I can't believe that 7 years have passed by. It just boggles my mind. So let's talk about some of my finished projects. I think you could see it already. I have completed my pumpkin spice flax light sweater from Tin Can Knits, and I used 4 skeins of Knitting Notions classic merino sport weight yarn. I used US 3 and 6 needles. I started with a tubular cast on. It's not as stretchy as I hoped for. I think something went awry when I casted this on. This was my first time casting this on for a sweater, and it's just really not stretchy. So I think I did something wrong, or I didn't add as many stitches, or I'm not quite sure what went wrong, but I think I need to improve on my technique, because I'd like to try this again because it looks so clean for like a cuff or for the neckline of a sweater, and it's really not stretchy. So I really had to block the heck out of the neckline so that I could get my head through it, and also so it doesn't really just cut into my neck. But other than that, I am so pleased with this sweater. You could probably see some pillowing already because I've been wearing this. I wore it in Boston when we went on our Boston trip, which I'll talk about at the end. But other than that, it's just perfect for fall, and I've gotten so many compliments on it already. I highly recommend this pattern because it's free, and it's so easy. You don't really have to look at the pattern except for how long to knit for until you separate for the sleeves, or how long until you have to do the bottom portion. So it's a very good beginner pattern for those who are kind of scared off from sweater knitting. So that was my first FO that started the process of all the FOs flying off my needles. The second FO, actually no, the one that I completed before this was, let me put my drink down, my Roundabout Shawlette, which I completed first, and it's just been sitting in my bedroom for a while. This is the second Roundabout Shawlette that I've knit up. I was commissioned by the person who I gifted this shawl to knit 2 more for her friends. So she picked this colorway and the other colorway, which I'll show you later. I think that this pattern would be a lot better in a solid yarn, but it still looks completely fine in a variegated or semi-variegated. There's only really 2 colors for this. But get a load of this lace. They're little roundabouts. Can you see that? It's just so, I don't know, it reminds me, the reason why I called it the Roundabout Shawlette is because it reminded me of the roadway roundabouts that you come to, and it's so simple, and the edge is a I-cord edging, so it gives off a really nice clean edging to the garter portion. it's just so simple. It's about 8 to 10 stitches of a lace pattern, and the rest is garter. And I think it creates a nice effect. Can't really see what I'm doing, but hopefully you can see all of this. So it's called the Roundabout Shawlette. It's a shawlette because it resembles a scarf, and it's kind of a smaller scale shawl. So I think it's just perfect for a quick knit. This is number 2. Number 3 is a work in progress. I am actually releasing this pattern this Monday. So I don't know what date that is. Today is Tuesday. So less than a week from now, 6 days from now. I have test knitters that are completing their projects, and I actually had 15 to 20 test knitters this time. So hopefully the pattern will be completely perfect, and I've been taking down their notes and what they'd like to see that would make the pattern even better. The pattern is completely written out and charted, and I even have a chart for ticking off all of the rows. So I don't think it gets any more clear than that. So yeah, the Roundabout Shawlette. The next thing I've been working on is my Beacon Hill scarf and mitts. So the first of the Beacon Hill patterns is, I don't know if you can see in this lighting, but it's this really nice texture. Let's see if it's the correct way. I think I've been showing it in pictures this way. It's like a little hill or a little tent, and it's a very, very, very simple stitch that you can memorize within a couple of rounds. And I knit this to 53 inches before I did an invisible bind off, which is a Kitchener stitch. But I really think that you could get away with just knitting this to about 50 inches. I suggested in the pattern that you could also cut the pattern in half and only do like a cowl portion where you don't loop it twice. And so if you had yarn, this yarn is very flimsy. It's a very lightweight, lightweight, bulky yarn, and so it's very floppy. But if you had a yarn that had more substance to it, that can hold the shape, where this was, let's see, it was Meersal yarn Miski, I think that's how you pronounce it, in burgundy. And it's just, it doesn't really, even after blocking, it doesn't really hold its shape the greatest. So, but it's beautiful. Right now it's a little bit dark out, so I don't think you could really see the texture as well as I hope for. But that one I actually just released, so you can find that on Ravelry. It's called the Beacon Hill Infinity Scarf. When I am completely done publishing the mitten pattern, I will bundle the two together. So in the same type of colorway, I knit up the first Beacon Hill mitten. I did not knit the second one yet because this one's a little bit too big. I'm going to line this with fleece in the inside because I have all the extra wiggle room. So this would be an extra large, although I did not include this size in the pattern because it's really almost too large. But I did knit up a complete pair in Malabrigo Rios yarn, and I absolutely love this yarn. It was such a pleasure knitting this yarn. It was so silky. The colorway is so spectacular. This is the Arco Iris, Arco Iris colorway. And I knit these up on size 6 needles and also 6 needles for the main body. I will suggest 6 needle, size US 6 and then 7 to make this with more positive ease. But when I was walking around Boston, this was actually kind of stretching out and it didn't feel form-fitting. It actually felt like a size large when I was walking around, and then it kind of shrunk in on itself again when I took it off. But isn't this texture so lovely? I was inspired by one of my favorite mystery book series, A Still Life with Murder. That's the first book. P.B. Ryan is the author, and it's a Gilded Age Boston series in the 1800s. There's a romance between this guy that's wanted for murder, but he's innocent. He falls in love with the governess, which is the person who's like the nanny to his child, and it's an unrequited love because governesses shouldn't marry, and just there's stuff to the storyline that I shouldn't reveal, but it's an unrequited love, and it's set in historical Boston. And the book, which is the third book, is Death on Beacon Hill, and so it's a maroon colorway to the original cover of the book, and it has like this tent-like top where they wrote like the Gilded Age mystery book series, and it just kind of inspired the whole process of the scarf, the mittens, which aren't the same colorway, but they do match because it does have tones from the scarf. But yeah, I am so pleased with these. I can't wait to design another mitten pattern. I love mittens. They just fly off your needles. For the first time I used my Chiagu size US 6 needles that are bamboo. And they're very sharp. I felt like I was splitting some of the burgundy yarn with this, since it was an acrylic yarn and it was so fluffy that it caught between the strands. But I really like these. The cable is very flexible, much more flexible than the Knit Picks needles that I've been using a lot, my interchangeable ones or my fixed needles. So it was kind of nice working with these. Just you could bend these as many times as you want. And it was nice having a little bit more of a point, although I felt like I was starting to give myself a callus with these. So yes, I have one more finished object for this episode, and I've been knitting these forever. So these are my Regia design line by Arne and Carlos and which order? Arne and Carlos. And I think this is called the Summer Nights colorway. I found this on Etsy for like $4 cheaper than the baseline price of this online, and I was so pleased. So I even bought other Regia lines in that order because I'm like, woohoo, sale! But I love the yarns that are just like colorwork or virile. It looks like I really did all this work, and it's so impressive looking, and I'm like, I just knit, I didn't do anything extra. I have a little bit extra that I'm going to use for a hat that's for a knitted toy, and it's going to be perfect because this toy is Scandinavian, and so I don't have to do any of that color work for his hat. So let's get on to what's on my needles still. Alright, so living in my Parisian project bag, I sewed this myself. Inside is lined with a gray and white polka dot liner. that matches the scene. Inside this bag is my third Roundabout Shawlette. So this one is a blue and gray colorway. It's Knit Picks Hawthorne Sport multi-yarn in the pearl. So it does the same kind of zigzagging with the colorway. And I'm using my Darn Good Yarn knitting bowl that's wooden. It's kind of small, but it does fit a skein of yarn. And I like that you can remove the yarn strand if you need to. It's not locked in there for eternity until you finish the project. And so this is what I'm talking about when I said that I charted the pattern, I wrote it out, and I also have progress charts. I'm going to cover up some of the chart. So I have side by side, I have charted the pattern and I have written the row instructions. And then on the bottom of this, I have charted 3 different charts, one for the increase sections, another for the main body where there's no decreases or increases, and then the last section is the decrease section. And it's just keeping everything all neat and tidy for people like me who stop mid-repeat. It's nice to have your exact row ticked off so that when you come back to it, you're not redoing things or messing with the lace pattern. In the same bag, I guess I also have another chart. The Beacon Hill Mitt chart. And I have that all, the whole thing charted out at the end of the pattern. So, it's a very large project bag. You can fit a sweater in here. There's the shawlette. I also have from, was it last year or the year before that? I started this fall shawl, no, why am I saying shawl still? Cardigan. Okay, so like a cardigan over a sweater, that'll be real nice. I started this, I think last year, maybe not, it could have been longer than that. And I am almost done. I have to do the bottom, which I think I will do garter stitch, and then garter stitch running along the sides all the way up to the neckline, and then buttons. And I'll have to finish off the sleeves. It kind of looks like a scrappy cardigan because I have so many different colorways working, but this is my chunky fall cardigan. And you can't really see it because I didn't use yarn that really stuck out, but here, let me take this off. I did an afterthought, where'd it go? Right here. An afterthought pocket. So this yellowish green yarn that is running through here, which you probably can't see because I have yellow in the yarn in the colorway. I'm going to pick out those stitches and then knit a pocket and stockinette and then bind off the edge to the bottom, and then you should be able to stick your hand into the pocket. So yeah, here's the back. So there's about 5 different colorways going in this. I bought some extra yarn from Michael's. This, that's where I initially bought it, so that I definitely had enough for the border of the cardigan in one color. Didn't want to run out of that. So it's really eating up lots and lots of yarn. That is Lion's Pride Wolfe spun yarn. This color is taupe. I have like this desert desert sun. I don't really remember the name, but something about desert. And then orange, the maroon colorway, the Fair Isle looking colorway that mixes all these colors together. Nope, some more of the desert sun. Yep, so I have a bag filled with full skeins, half skeins, partial skeins, and there's so much yarn going all over the place. This stuff is getting really tangled. So I'd like to finish that as soon as I'm done with the Roundabout Shawlette, and then I'll have 2 fall cardigan sweater things to wear, garments. I know I'm using thing. And finally, drum roll please, I have the cutest work in progress going. In my Halloween bag, this is the first project bag that I ever sewed up. There's a little strap, although I don't get what's going on here. It didn't fit quite right, and so the strap is a little awkward. But I love this project. Oh my gosh. Do you see this? This is Sven, the Scandinavian. I want this sweater so badly. Why does he have the coolest sweater? I mean, this is really cool, but I mean, come on. Look at this. I want his sweater. And look, he has a beard. And I wanted him to have a little bit of blush cheeks. So I rubbed on a little bit of the pastel oil type of crayons onto his cheeks to give him a little color. I used 2 different colors for his eyes. I used gray and blue, so it would have a little bit of a not tonal, but just to give it a little bit of life, because usually people's eyes have more than one shade to it. It's not just like blue, it's blue mixed in with something else, or green mixed in with something else. The cool part about this project is everything is seamless. So the head is connected to the sweater, and it's really clever. First you knit a row, then you purl a row, and then you start the ribbing. And that makes the neckline seem like it's jutting out, like I put a sweater over him and not it's just connected to his neck. So it makes it jut out. And the pants are connected to the sweater. So you flipped over the ribbing on the bottom portion, and then you picked up stitches, and then you knit like a sock, and then you separated for the legs. I will be attaching his socks, and then his shoes, and then his mittens, and then finally his hat, which will be knit with the leftover yarn from my socks. So if you can imagine that sock hat, wherever I put my socks, well, whatever, you can imagine what the socks look like. So his hat will be a long hat that's kind of floppy, kind of like a gnome hat. This is so adorable. So I'll be stuffing him later to give him some body. I put a little bit in a sweater. I really should be kind of stuffing him right now before I start the socks, because I think it's going to be really hard to get the stuffing all the way throughout his body if I wait too long. But eventually I'm going to be figuring out how to give him some eyebrows and then some hair, because he's pretty bald. He's like Mr. Clean bald right now. So yeah, this is so adorable. And I'm just using, for his pants, let's see if I have the band in here. Where'd it go? Huh, I had it. It was like willow rustic that I got from Tuesday morning for like $1.99. I got a whole bunch of skeins that I was going to do a colorwork sweater, but his pants are so small I'm going to have leftover, like tons left over. So yeah, I am so excited for Sven to be done. I'll put him on my piano while I'm playing Grieg pieces, which is a Norwegian composer, and he did pieces called March of the Trolls, which is a really cool Halloween-y type piece. Wedding Day at Trollholden and Puck, which I really like. You can YouTube those. So if you, his last name is spelled G-R-I-E-G, Grieg. So he composed in a little shack out by a lake in the mountainous areas, very scenic, and he just got really inspired to compose pieces that were very naturey. And right now I'm learning March of the Trolls. It's also named something else, but that's the common name for it, or at least for Americans. And I guess I do have one more that's hiding out somewhere over here. This has been going on forever. I have not touched it in a while, but one day I'll finish my Prism cowl. And there's no pattern for this. I was just giving a little bit of texture by adding some purled rose ever so often. The skein is a skein that's lots of different skeins are tied and connected to this. It's like literally tied. It's not a seamless stream of strands. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble talking, I guess. So that's that. It's starting to come apart. I mean, some areas are really thin and then some areas are pretty thick. So it really gives it a lot of texture. And this is one of my favorite colors. So this will go nicely with my coat eventually when I finish. And I think that's it for work in progresses that I'm currently working on. I mean, there's some languishing away in the basket, but that's really what I'm trying to finish this fall before I start any more projects. So I hope you've enjoyed all of those work in progresses and finished objects. Other than that, I've recently gone on 2 trips. The first being probably the best trip I've ever taken with my husband, or maybe in general. I mean, I've been to Paris with my mother-in-law, and that was really awesome. But I think I enjoyed Boston equally so, or maybe even more, because Boston has been on my bucket list for a really long time. And we just jam-packed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday 2 weekends ago with all sorts of sightseeing and tours and a Segway tour and lots and lots of shopping and lots of spending on eating food. My husband booked an Odyssey cruise, a dinner cruise tour. Well, it's not a tour. Saturday night. So it was really kind of like an extravagant time for me. I took hundreds and hundreds of photos of churches that we went to that were important, like Paul Revere's church, which is called the Old North Church in the North End, that he lit a lantern in the steeple of the church, which alerted the town to know that the British were coming. We went to the First Unitarian Church, which holds Paul Revere's largest bell. There were hundreds of bells, but this was the largest bell, and that one's in the steeple of the King's Church. We actually attended the service on Sunday, which was really cool because in those churches back then, the inside of the church was a lot different because the pews were like in a cubicle fashion, where you rented a cubicle, which is your form of tithing or giving money to the church. So each cubicle had a different view. Like obviously some cubicles had a better view than others, and those would be more expensive. It's not just a cubicle, but there were benches in the cubicle that faced different directions. So that was really, and some of them were padded. Like the King's Church was padded. The Old North Church was not, although who knows back in the day if they had padding on the pews at all. But the thing about the King's Church was it was Anglican, which is the King's religion, until the American Revolution. And basically during that time in Boston, when they were separating from the King, he probably didn't want an Anglican church. It didn't go over so well. So they tried to turn it Episcopalian, I believe, and they found a minister, but he wasn't ordained. And then eventually they decided, Freeman, I believe is the last name of the founder of the Unitarian, the King's Church is now Unitarian, which is all like a branch of Protestantism. So they're all very similar, but Unitarianism is more of the enlightened mind, where they started during that time they questioned the king's authority, so they were always also questioning the Pope's authority. So and it was really interesting. We went underneath the church and saw the crypts, and then we climbed a really narrow staircase and ladder type situation all the way to the steeple to look at Paul Revere's bell, which I think they pull the bell once a week on Sunday still. It was just fascinating, and we walked everywhere. My phone clocked in at least 18,000 steps the first day. The second day, like 13,000, and the day after that, which we didn't do as much, it was like 8,000, 10,000 steps, and most of that was like a Segway tour, which you don't walk. But we walked, we went to the Beacon Hill area on Friday. We went to the original Cheers restaurant, and so we looked at the bottom area, which I haven't watched Cheers really, but the bottom portion is what I imagine what would be inside the show, and then the top portion of the restaurant, which is connected to the hotel, that is like the film looking area. They replicated what it would look like on the set replica. So we ate there, and then we walked all around Beacon Hill, because why not? If you have a scarf and mittens knit in that name, you have to film, shoot some photos on Beacon Hill. And so we walked around, we walked into the public garden area, and then we walked through we walked through some of the streets on Beacon Hill, which is filled with row townhouses. We walked down this street called Acorn Street, which I found on Google, and it is actually in my series, but I didn't remember that until I was flipping through the book. And it has really large stones for the path in the street. It's much different than the stone pavement elsewhere, which is like brick stone. And so it's on a hill, so there's no way a car can actually drive up it. So it would have to be like a horse without a buggy or just walking. And there were tons and tons of people. I couldn't figure out why in this one street of all of Beacon Hill, everyone kept coming to shoot photos of themselves on the street, or just to take pictures of the row houses on the street. But I later found out that there's a lot of criminals that lived on that street. So that's probably what brought in all the tourism there. We walked around the financial district, the North End, the Little Italy of North End, Paul Revere's house. Let's see what else. There's a very famous pastry, like cannoli, restaurant. It's not a restaurant. It's just like a shop where you buy tons of cannolis and all sorts of baked goods. It's called Mike's Pastry, I believe. And there's actually a line that forms outside of the place. And everyone was walking around town with a little Mike's Pastry box with the string tied around. So it was really like the thing to do in Little Italy. We ate at a restaurant where my husband had seafood, but I don't eat seafood, believe it or not. And so we didn't go into the Oyster House or some of the other places that had all that great seafood. I don't know, I had so much fun, and I would do it all over again. Maybe I'm sorry that we didn't visit Salem because we didn't have time to rent a car and go all the way to Salem and look at the witch trial, touristy things. They had like bus tours that would go out and drive through the night. I don't know what they did, like looked at the graves or some houses, but that looked like fun, but we just didn't have the time to do that. Yeah, it was so much fun. New England was fun. I would definitely visit Boston and then venture out to the other New England-y areas. And then this last weekend we went to Kalahari in Wisconsin Dells, which is a huge water park. We only spent one night, and we went with my parents and shared a 2-bedroom suite. So it was only like $50 more to tack on a room. But the boys had fun because they stayed home with each of the grandparents when we went to Boston. So this was kind of like their trip / early birthday present because they're turning 7 around Halloween. So yeah, we've been doing so many fun things. I mean, in September, the middle of September, we went camping with our neighbors. So yeah, it's been pretty busy between that and writing up those patterns and of course knitting it and some of the other projects that I have to do that doesn't involve knitting. So yeah, it's been fun. I'm enjoying Teavana's pumpkin spice brulee in a David's teacup. Actually in Boston there was a David's tea store, so I had to walk in. I didn't buy anything, but I walked in just because I've only bought stuff online through David's Tea. But this mug is like a sea greeny light mint color, which is one of my favorite colors besides teal, and it just looks like cables. So I really love the texture of this, and the tea is really good. I didn't put any sugar in it, so it doesn't really need to be sweet, but it's really close to like just chai tea. So it's good, and I got it 30% off, and I grabbed a bottle of like apple pie tea or whatever they're calling it at Teavana, and that was on sale. So good stuff, good stuff. I'm enjoying fall. It's been a little bit warm, but those darn wasps that are attacking all of our yard in the back and then all over our shutters by our bedroom windows. I've been kind of wanting the weather to turn cold so that they chill, you know? They're not all over the grass. I couldn't mow the lawn for about 3 weeks straight. My husband actually mowed it last night when it was like sunset, just because we were worried that they'd come out. But I think it's starting to turn a little bit colder, so I could start wearing some of my knits and maybe knit outside without the wasps in the backyard, hopefully. Not to say that bees are not helpful, but wasps are a whole nother breed. Yellow jackets specifically. But yeah, I hope that you've been having a good start of fall and you're knitting a lot of nice things. And I thank you for watching this podcast, whether you're returning from, subscribing, or, this is the first time you've seen this podcast. So until next time, happy knitting. Thank you.